There are so many arguments in favor of liberty. One that's perhaps not appreciated as much as it should be is that liberty is valuable because we are ignorant. Strange, because you'd think that ignorance is something that would require regulation and correction. But what would Hayek say? I'm Scott Nelson with the Austrian Economic Center and Hayek Institute in Vienna, Austria. And this week, I'm following up on what I promised you at the end of my last episode to take a deeper look at the Constitution of Liberty. And so we're going to take a look today at Chapter 2, The Creative Powers of a Free Civilization. So we're starting off with Chapter 2 because one of the previous videos, which we'll link to in the description, on the true meaning of liberty, more or less already covers Chapter 1 of the Constitution of Liberty. Okay, so in Chapter 2, The Creative Powers of a Free Civilization, Hayek discusses why most of the advantages of being a member of civilized society accrue from the fact that we benefit from much more knowledge than we possess individually, even when we do not understand these creations or ideas. And this then raises the question of what the best way to expand society's collective knowledge is. Should we leave people to decide for themselves where they may make mistakes, cause bad outcomes, and waste resources? Or should we provide some direction and intervention from the state to ensure that only knowledge that we all agree will be beneficial is sought after? Now, we don't often meditate on our ignorance, but this is a key point. And Hayek opens the chapter with a maxim or a quote regarding Socrates. He says, "The Socratic maxim that the recognition of our ignorance is the beginning of wisdom has profound significance for our understanding of society. The first requisite for this is that we become aware of men's necessary ignorance of much that helps him to achieve his aims." Now, civilization may be the product of human action, though this doesn't mean that it's the product of human design. We cannot conceive how civilization evolved into the form it is today. Our minds are the constantly evolving product of the civilization we've been exposed to and our individual experiences, many of which we're not even aware of. We don't know what civilization will become, so in order to advance, we must allow for the continuous revision of our conceptions and ideals. Now, Hayek believes that individual liberty leads to the growth of knowledge that makes civilization better for everyone. He believes that knowledge is best obtained through individuals freely choosing how to act, what to research, and engaging in trial and error. Many of the great advancements across history result from a series of accidental discoveries that have since expanded our knowledge and greatly improved our lives. Anything from, for example, penicillin antibiotics to the microwave oven, or to even the humble tea bag. Now, before we move on, it's important to understand what Hayek means by knowledge. Hayek believes that developments within civilization come not just from scientific discovery, but also from within cultural, social, economic, and technological spheres. So, when Hayek speaks of knowledge, he also includes customs, values, traditions, habits, individual experiences, the know-how of production and trade, and even the knowledge of how and where to find particular pieces of knowledge. So this broad definition acknowledges the fact that an unquantifiable number of factors lead to discoveries and innovations, so it's impossible to know what circumstances and environment will create the next great idea. Now, we pride ourselves on increasing our knowledge, but the more we know, the more we also realize we don't know. And unfortunately, it's commonly thought that scientific advance is diminishing our ignorance and that we can therefore more effectively control human activities. Hayek says, I quote, "It is for this reason that those intoxicated by the advance of knowledge so often become the enemies of freedom." The more we know, the less any one individual mind can absorb of the total knowledge. The more civilized we become, the more ignorant each individual becomes of how civilization works. Now, Hayek believes we command many tools, which is a term that he uses to describe traditions and institutions, many tools which are the product of cumulative growth. We often are ignorant as to why we use them, but they have undoubtedly shaped civilization into what it is today. Every change in conditions creates a new problem for society that is gradually solved by establishing a new overall adjustment. We cannot predict which combination of aptitudes, opportunities, knowledge, and skills will combine to bring about a solution to the problem. And that's why we rely on the experiences and knowledge of others to inform our own decisions. Therefore, Hayek argues, we need decentralized decision-making that allows for diverse ranges of experimentation that increase the likelihood of creating good new ideas. The entire concept of liberty rests on the recognition of our ignorance. For if we were omniscient, we would not need liberty. In fact, liberty would make complete foresight impossible. In recognizing our ignorance and allowing liberty, we allow for the unforeseeable to happen. Hayek makes it clear that this is a fundamental premise of his understanding of liberty. And I quote, "We shall find throughout this book that, though we are usually not aware of it, all institutions of freedom are adaptations to this fundamental fact of ignorance, adapted to deal with chances and probabilities, not certainty. Certainty we cannot achieve in human affairs, and it is for this reason that to make the best use of what knowledge we have, we must adhere to rules which experience has shown to serve best on the whole, though we do not know what will be the consequences of obeying them in the particular instance." Okay, so what this in turn means is that we cannot confine liberty to particular instances where we know it will do good. Or we could also say that we cannot confine liberty to particular instances where we believe it will do good. And this is one of the paradoxes of freedom, namely that if it's granted only when we know or believe beforehand that its effects will be beneficial, then it's not freedom. If we knew how freedom would be used, then the case for it would largely disappear. Therefore, we must accept that it will sometimes be used in an unacceptable way. We must simply have faith that, on balance, freedom will do more good than bad. And this has ramifications for the relation between free individuals and the majority, because it doesn't matter whether the majority ever makes use of this freedom. Just as we should not surrender freedom to the designs of a self-appointed, all-knowing tyrant, so too, if we were to limit freedom to whatever use the majority would make of it, would be to defeat its function. One person may use his freedom in a way more important to society than millions of people use their respective freedoms. So on the one hand, while catering to the majority is to admit of what has already been tried and agreed upon, it also does not allow for new experimentation to perhaps find something even better. To cater then just to the majority would actually destroy the liberty that got us to where we are in the first place. And this is because new discoveries and inventions are often faced with significant skepticism, criticism, and even mockery. We saw this with the light bulb, the car, and even personal computers. The power of individual liberty is that people were free to pursue these things even in the face of widespread disapproval. It means that controversial ideas and products are able to enter the marketplace of ideas where they will either succeed or fail. Even the most intelligent committee of government technocrats has no way of knowing where we should focus our efforts or what knowledge will turn out to be good or bad. So Hayek sees liberty as a way of allowing society's values to evolve. What we regarded as good and beautiful in the past may be different from today. We don't know if the values we hold today are good. Instead, we need to allow competition between different values, and those groups adhering to the wrong beliefs will decline as people leave them. Now, there's perhaps a paradox at work here in what Hayek is saying, because on the one hand, Hayek says that the defense of liberty requires that we not cater to majority opinion. And yet, on the other hand, the only way we'll know whether an idea has been successful or not is based on competition, whose outcome is by definition based on what the majority choose to adopt. So the ideas adopted by the majority is the feedback mechanism by which we evaluate the success of new endeavors. And yet, the truly free thinker or innovator must always be prepared to walk a path different from the one deemed successful today. The free individual may come to be seen as unreasonable by the majority of society, like the man who returns to Plato's cave after his eyes have been exposed to the light of day. Freedom then almost seems to come into conflict with reason. And we'll have more to say on the topic of reason in later chapters. But for now, let's just state that reason aims at control and predictability. But the advance of reason requires us to restrain ourselves from exercising the control that's in our power, which becomes increasingly difficult as technological powers of government grow. We must resist the urge to treat society as if it were an organization. In an organization, you can make sure that all ships are sailing in the right direction, since an organization has an ultimate purpose to fulfill. But for Hayek, society doesn't have an ultimate purpose, and therefore, it's pernicious to direct it, to command its members as if it were an organization. The freedoms to think and act are fundamental to the human condition and the development of civilization. Let no one think they are too wise to benefit from the knowledge of somebody else. And that's what Hayek would say.